Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So sorry, I was experiencing some technical difficulties. Not sure what's going on, but we're trying to resolve this. Hello, Debbie Fine Country. Thank you for joining us today. So sorry for the delay. We're currently experiencing some technical difficulties. Thank you, Tumike, for joining us. Thank you. Good afternoon, and welcome to Esther's Preparation Room Women's Network Instagram Live series. For some weird reason, we were experiencing some technical difficulties, but we are back on live now. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I am waiting for today's guest, Angela Tella, to join. Thank you so much. Hello. Hello, Chama George. Hello. Okay, I see Angela. She's connecting with me, and I am going to live Angela now. Thank you so much, Angela. I don't know, for some weird reason, we're experiencing technical difficulties today, but we're going to be troopers and we're going to go right along with it. We're going to ride the wave. Like I was saying, thank you so much, everyone, for connecting right back with us. Good afternoon and welcome to Esther's Preparation Room Women's Network Instagram Live Series. EPR Women's Network is a platform where today's professional Christian woman can access the tools and resources to deploy her gifts and her talents in the marketplace. Our purpose is to build up and empower women to achieve the best in their personal and professional lives. The network is one of the four global platforms powered by Esther's Preparation Room, and we currently exist in 3 markets. Our guest for today is Angela Tella, the beautiful Angela Tella. Angela is a registered dietitian. She's a consultant, a trainer, and an author with an honors degree in human nutrition and dietetics from King's College London. Her wide-ranging experience and expertise is reflected in her diverse past and present client portfolio, spanning from the food service, contract catering, and weight loss industries to government agencies, local authorities, and NHS organizations. Thank you so much, Angela, for joining us. And please give us a big background about yourself.
Okay. First of all, thanks for having me. It's lovely. It's a pleasure to be here. In terms of background, I think you've probably shared my background already. But I'll just add to that on top of that, I also wear the hat of being a mentor, and I've been running my own business consultancy now for about, well, actually, we turned 14 on the 7th of this month. So we're now in our 14th year.
Wow.
And there are just lots of other hats that I wear, but I'm sure as we go through the conversation, you'll find out a little bit more about me.
Okay, thank you so much. So I know today's topic is centered around the finisher's mindset. As a woman with a finisher's mindset, how do you approach life on a daily basis? I mean, you wear various hats. How do you do that?
I do. And well, the first thing, I mean, for me, anyone who knows me knows that I am a list girl. I love to do lists. There's just something about writing things down, and then going through the list as you go through the day and crossing things off. I find that when I have a to-do list, it helps me to focus. So I have to-do lists on my phone, I have them on paper, and I find that they really help me focus on what I want to accomplish during the day or any given time period. And I'm one of these people who, if I don't get through my to-do list, it just keeps nagging away at me. So I have to. So I find that for me personally, they help me to focus. And additionally, there's just something about crossing things off. There's a sense of accomplishment, and that then sort of motivates you to do the next thing on the list, if that makes sense. So I find for me personally, that's how I run my days. And this applies to whether it's business or family stuff or personal stuff. I just find that a to-do list really, really helps me. And one of the things I also love to do is to go through my list and see that when I've ticked everything off, there's just something that comes with it. It's sort of those things that for me personally, I find that very motivating, yeah.
So I'm guessing you carry a list all over the place then, because in order
I
to
have lists.
do
I
this,
do.
you must be very organized. And I'm picturing that you have like an Excel spreadsheet that you just.
You know me now then. Yes, I do lists on Excel. I just find that for me, because I can see what I need to do, it just motivates me to do it. in the sense that out of sight, out of mind. And I feel that because of the kind of, the way life is at the moment, just generally, we live in a very fast-paced world. I feel that if you don't have things before you, it's very easy to forget and not do them. So hence the to-do lists.
That's great. All right. So what made you, I mean, something must have spurred you to become this woman that uses lists? Was there anything in particular that happened that made you this woman that carries all this list around? I mean, what spurred that? What were the major challenges that you faced or that you encountered that made you this woman who has a finisher's mindset?
Well, one thing for me in particular is I just feel that, first of all, I mean, like you hinted at it, I like to be organized. I like to be organized. And I attribute that to my mother. My mother, in fact, I just hear her voice in my head saying, everything has a place and a place for everything. So I find that for me to accomplish anything, I have to have order about me. And it just helps to know what you're doing. Then at least it helps you to pace yourself. And I find that when I'm organized, then things are not necessarily as challenging as they might first appear because I'm able to break things down into, manageable tasks. So say for instance, there's a piece of work or there's something to do. I mean, it's like going shopping, I mean, it's easier to shop with a list than without.
True. You're right.
So if we look at challenges in the same way, or a piece of work or a project, if you break it down into manageable chunks, it just helps to take out the unforeseen, or it kind of gives you the ability to assess a situation because you've broken it down. And each time you accomplish something, then it helps you to chip away, so to speak, at the challenge. So in terms of challenges, I mean, like I just explained, it's always good to just be able to break things down. Once something is manageable, then it doesn't come across as being as overwhelming as it might first appear.
Okay, so my next question now to you would be, have you ever encountered any kind of challenges that you were not able to break down with a list?
Well, when it comes to lists for me generally are more to do with, everyday tasks, running the business, meetings, things like that. When it comes to challenges, I mean, life is full of challenges, and I've had my fair share of challenges. And I think until you leave the face of the earth, you will always have challenges. So, in terms of challenges, I mean, setting up a business, let's just use that as an example. Like I said earlier at the beginning, the business is now, well, we're now in our 14th year.
Mm.
But setting it up was a challenge because it's like with anything new, you're going into the unknown. I mean, yes, you do your research, you find out, you do your due diligence, but there's only so much that will help you find out. It's only when you now dip your toe into the water that you figure out whether the water is cold or hot or warm. And so I think setting up a business, whatever kind of business it might be, can be pretty challenging because you've got to, once again, like I said, you're walking into the unknown. It's a risk you're taking. It's a step of faith. You don't know what lies on the other side of your decision. For me, stepping out came on the back of deciding that, you know what, I think I need to quit the 9 to 5 because it wasn't working with my family life. And so there was that element of risk, what if, all the what ifs. And so when you're setting up with a business, in a new business or any venture, it can be intimidating and it can be daunting because you don't know. And so in doing that, in terms of stepping out, you find that, or well, I found there was a lot to deal with. You have to get your head around taxes. You have to get your, accounting, finances, getting clients. And just generally setting up anything new can be that the initial stage is very, very intense because there's so much to do. And so I found that to be a bit of a challenge. It wasn't very challenging, but it was challenging. Another challenge that I would allude to was, I mean, as you mentioned before as well, I'm an author.
Yeah.
And coming up with an idea, yes, that's very exciting, but it's now to execute the idea. That's when the challenges, you come across the challenges. So I'm the author of 2 books, but I have them here.
Great. Can we find them?
This one right here is Healthy West African and Wise, and it's, well, the world's first book looking at the um, health health issues facing people of West African origin. So it looks at that, and it looks at providing answers to those problems. So, for instance, the Black community or the West African community has high incidences of different um, health conditions like diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, prostate cancer. And so, what I wanted the book to address was to look at how to overcome those health challenges, to prevent them in the first place, and then to also help people manage them if they had them, but also look at diet and lifestyle from a wider perspective and look at it from a West African context. Because many times you find that a lot of the information out there is, it can be pretty one-sided or not very culturally competent, so to speak. So, I mean, getting this baby here,
That must
that
have.
was a challenge. That was definitely a challenge because there was a lot. I mean, yes, the idea came, but it was then executing the idea, getting a publisher to pick it up. And when I couldn't find a publisher who would do it, I had to set up my own publishing house,
Wow.
which we did do. And all the challenges from concept to production to marketing, there were different challenges along the way. But here we are, so much so that we then have another book. So once
And
again, very, very challenging. But this is like a companion to the other book. And this one is because I thought to myself, there wasn't anything on the market celebrating West African food. And I felt, this book right here showcases 80 different foods that are very common or popular in the West African diet. And it looks at each food. It provides, you've got lovely, beautiful, glossy pictures in here, and nutritional information about the foods and what they're used for, the different West African names. And so that's just that. But it was challenging getting these done. It really was. It took me 4 years from concept to finally getting them in my hands, 2 years of research, 2 years of writing. I had to comb through the literature to make sure that I had accurate information to present. And there were challenges along the way.
and I
I can go on, but there were definitely some challenges.
I'm inspired by you already in the fact that one, I I think this is my first time about hearing of such a book. I've never heard of such a book before. Secondly, the fact that even though that book was not out there, you did something about it. You wanted to make sure that most West Africans, if not all West Africans, could lay their hands on this book because you had and information to provide to them, or rather to us, to our community. Not only that, no publishing company would pick up your book. And you said, why not me? Why don't I start my own? That is great. That is awesome. And something that's coming across my mind is the fact that even the kind of foods that we eat, being in the diaspora, living in the living in the diaspora, we've had to substitute some of our foods, right? And sometimes I feel like I still eat as if I was a farmer because the way our parents grew up, our great grandparents grew up, was using food that were really high in carbohydrates, right? And coming to America, living in America, living in the diaspora, personally, I feel like I haven't really educated myself on the kind and the types of food I should be eating in the 21st century. Back then, I feel like our foods back then were heavily focused on carbohydrates to give them energy to go to the farm. But now that we live in cities, we live. I mean, our lives we're not really doing so much hard work. We're doing more mental work right now. Even when you go to work, you take the train, you take the bus, you drive. Life is easier for us now as opposed to back then, whereby it doesn't really require rigorous work. And having this kind of book educating us on our diet, educating us on the kind of food that we should eat, I think that is very, very important. And that will also increase our lifespan. So kudos to you on that. Where can we find your book?
Thank you. Well, the books are available and they have their own website. It's called healthywestafrican.com. So if you go on there, you'll also find some. I mean, one thing I didn't mention was that the book well, the first book anyway, covers, like I said, different healthcare conditions, how to prevent them, how to manage them. It also looks at, the sorts of things, it gives people an idea of what healthy West African eating should look like. It also takes people through how to modify or change things in the kitchen to make their, what they're eating healthier. And then it provides things because, yes, like you mentioned, a lot of us live in the diaspora. We like takeaways, we like different things. Okay, how do you make better choices when you're in a restaurant? How do you adapt recipes so that you still have the authentic taste, but not as many maybe calories, or not as much salt? So it's just little things like that, even down to looking at mental health. There's a chapter in there on mental health and well-being, how to manage stress, looks at physical activity. So this is why I cover the whole thing, diet, lifestyle, because what I wanted to do was, I'm trained as a dietitian to make the nutritional science, make it accessible and usable by the person on the street who hasn't got a clue about nutritional science, the science behind nutrition. So that's what I wanted the books to do. So I thought, how do I take that experience that I have? I mean, I've been a dietitian for over almost 20 years. How do I, tweak that to suit this particular group of people, such that, because there just wasn't anything out there. There wasn't anything whatsoever.
And you're right. Not only that, I'm sorry, not only that, I've personally, I've noticed that when I try to substitute the food, and it doesn't taste the same.
Yes.
It almost feels like this is bland, and my taste buds, our food is very flavorful, when you use palm oil, you get a different flavor. When you use vegetable oil, you get a different flavor. When you use groundnut oil, you get a different flavor. When you use coconut oil, you get a different flavor. So being a dietitian, right, how has this helped you, and how are you educating us on making our food tasty while watching our calories, while watching the kind of food that we eat?
Okay, well, one of the key things that I also, before I answer that question, is the fact that, there's more to food than just calories or nutrition. Our food is part of our culture. It's part of who we are. And so I think if we can look at ways to tweak things so we still, like I said, enjoy those things, but we also get the nutritional benefits, because that's the other thing I found out, I observed, was that our foods do have nutritional benefit, but these were not being championed or celebrated. And that's what my second book does. It gets people to see that you can eat a healthy diet, or you can have a healthy diet, but you don't have to abandon your culture to do it, And so, to answer your question, I think the key thing is, there's a bit of feedback. So, the key things here are, in terms of what I do. I mean, yes, I'm a dietitian, and it's just, like I said, bringing the nutritional science to the level of the everyday person. You don't have to have a degree in nutrition to understand nutrition per se, as in for yourself. So the whole purpose behind the books was to break this down, to make that information accessible, and to give people a sense of pride as well. Because you do have this thing that, the West African diet is heavy, it's oily.
Yes.
Which to an extent is true. But I think what we need to be aware of also is that we just have some of these cultural stumbling blocks that have become barriers to good health for us. And if we can overcome those, which is one of the things my books do, then it's not a big deal. So in terms of educating people, well, the books are one of those things, one of the tools for educating people. But also, I do speak a lot on this subject matter. So yeah, it's speaking, writing, articles, tweeting, different things as part of my wider remit, so to speak. So it's just, educating people and just having conversations as well. Regardless of which platform is used to have the conversation. So we're doing that, for instance, today here.
Okay. So my next question is, how can we get your book on Amazon?
They're on Amazon.
Then
Yeah. So they're also they're
oh,
on Amazon. They've been on Amazon for a while. Yeah, they are there. So they're there. Amazon. They're on Amazon. They're also, like I said, we have our own website, healthywestafrican.com. So
so
yeah.
yeah. All right, definitely. So guys, if you're looking to get her books, they're on Amazon.com. And my next question for you is congratulations on 14 years. I mean, that must have taken everything in you. And when you were talking about the challenges that you faced when you first started the business, the scripture that came to my mind or my head was when um, Peter decided to walk on water, and Jesus told him to come. Peter did
Mm-hmm.
not know what was on the other side of the water. And for you, you took that bold step. You didn't know what was going you didn't know what to expect. You couldn't have envisioned the kind of challenges that you had when you started this business. So my question for you is what pushed you apart from family, because I heard you say family, what pushed you, what challenged you, what was your why, what was your reason for deciding to go into business, and what has kept you in this journey for 14 years?
Okay. So if I can take us back to when I was a student, if I can see myself now, I remember at the time thinking to myself that, you know what, when I do qualify, I would like to work for myself. Obviously, by then I wasn't married, I didn't have kids, whatever, but at the time, that was just something that I wanted to do. And so when I finished my degree, professional exams, because you have to have a license to practice. So, qualified for my registration. I did go through working in the health service for a good number of years, which was great for me though, because it was where I found my footing. I gained my confidence. I was able to hone my craft, my skills, because when you start out as a dietitian, as a junior dietitian, you kind of cover a wide range of specialties, and as you go through, you kind of funnel down to what you want to specialize in. And so by this time, I'd forgotten that I'd wanted to work for myself.
Of course.
And yeah, and it's interesting how God, he leads us. He does lead us. And I remember at this point in time, this was a good number of years in the health service. I was now a senior dietitian. I was a specialist dietitian. I was specializing in obesity at the time and diabetes. And so I remember going on a secondment for, I think it was, yeah, within a public health department for a year. And I was actually the lead clinician on a program that was aiming to reduce obesity. And following that, on return to my old department, I was told that my post no longer existed and I had to go back to doing what I did when I first qualified. So I did that for a few months, and I
Yeah.
I struggled. I genuinely struggled. And I think and then there was that, and then there was something that came up to do with family. It wasn't, and I remember speaking to my husband about it, and he said, yeah, I said, look, honey, I can't do this anymore. I said, okay, you know what? We're going to pray. And I remember that day, we prayed, and I remember going to church on the Sunday of that weekend, and God spoke so clearly, so clearly. And that Sunday night, I typed up my resignation letter and I handed in the following day. By this time, I might add, the business had already started because I was working part-time.
Okay.
So I had been straddling two lanes for a little bit. And then it was that situation that made me think, you know what, I think it's time to just jump in with both feet. And here we are today. It's not been without challenges. But one thing I know, back to the scripture you mentioned about Peter, you find out that when you look at how God works with his people, you will never know everything. There will always be that need to take a step of faith. And many times I think as believers, we are like Abraham, who, the Bible tells us that he was going without knowing. And even Peter coming out on the water, that was going without knowing. And I think if you look, there's just that pattern. That's just the way God works. because he wants us to depend on him on a step-by-step basis.
That's true. Who knows? Maybe if he had shown you the old picture, you probably wouldn't even have stepped out anyway. You'd have
You
been
know what? You know what's interesting? What's really interesting was just this afternoon, my husband was saying that. He was saying, that the reason why God doesn't show us everything is that we can just be so overwhelmed that you think, oh, you know what, Lord, thank you, but no thank
like,
you.
all right. So we have a question here from Adenike IB, and she's asking, what's your journey to this point? I would love to hear more about things along the way that brought you here, which I think you've actually alluded to. I'm not sure if you have anything else you want to add to that.
Um, well, what else can I say? Well, that's just, well, when it comes to, okay, let's, I mean, you mentioned at the beginning, you mentioned, oh, you wear many hats. Yeah. So the dietitian hat is just one hat. There are other things that I do. For instance, I do have a passion for a number of things. One of them is marriage. I'm very passionate about marriage. I think marriage is one of those things that is wonderful if it's done well. And I do have a soft spot for people who may be struggling. Um, and in terms of the journey to getting to that point, it was just, just people, God kept bringing people along my way. I have a thing for people. Just generally, I'm a people person. Anyone who knows me well knows I'm a people person. And so God just has always brought people along my way, be they single, be they, married, whatever. And I just have that soft spot for people generally. But marriage is just one of those things that I love to work alongside people, whether it's working with engaged couples about to get married, whether it's married couples who are having a bit of a rough spot, just doing that. And so that's another thing that I'm interested in or that I do. Another of my passions is, and this is something that we also do as part of the business, or that I do as part of the business, is looking at mentoring people, helping them become more confident in who they are, and just sort of working with people to be happy or okay being in their own skin. And part of that also, part of that involves coaching them on presenting themselves. How do you want to be seen or perceived? And that also then brings us on to things like how you dress, how you make up. Yeah. So they're just different things that I love. And then they've kind of all tied up into, I love to speak. Why? I'm a people person. I love to talk to people. Like, I'm enjoying this conversation with you.
Thank you.
So that's just me. And I guess as we go along, there'll be some more. I'll try and drop in a few more here as we go along.
Aramis 50 has a question here. And the question
Okay.
is, women deal with lots of hormonal imbalances at various stages of life. Are there any West African foods or diet you can recommend for overall well-being and balance? That is a very, very good question.
Okay. Well, I think that question is a very interesting one. It's a valid one, but I think one of the things that I must point out is that from a dietitian's point of view, we always treat people on an individual basis. And so it's a little, I mean, in terms of well-being, you would just need to have a healthy, balanced diet. But for the more specific, it would have to have someone in front of me to consult with them because a dietitian, I think one of the things that a lot of people don't quite realize is that dietitians, we look at a person's big picture. We don't just look at what they're eating, look at their lifestyle. And we try and figure out what the problem might be. And then we work with them to come to a solution that will work for them. Does that make sense? So it's very personalized and individual, very individual. It's very bespoke.
What I'm hearing is almost like you're similar to a doctor, but also different in the sense that you're looking at, when you say the whole picture, you're looking at the history of
Yes.
the patient or the history of the client. You're looking
Yes.
at what triggers, what is in their lifestyle that's triggering some of
Yes.
these health issues. Is it stress? Is it their environment? You're also looking at what kind of foods that they're eating. You're looking at different trends, basically. That's what I'm hearing correctly.
Yes.
And based on
Definitely.
information, that's what you use to create like a customized plan to
Mm,
get them to achieving the exact kind of goal. My next question now to you will be, what does your typical consultation look like, and how can people connect with you for a consultation session?
okay, typical consultation would be come in, we would have to look at your weight, to weight, height, well, anthropometrics as we call it, BMI and things like that. And then it would be a case of looking at weight history, looking at your medical history, looking at your diet history. So in essence, what are you eating now? And then do an assessment based on all that information. Then following that, then make any recommendations. But like I said, I mean, we are not, and this is the other thing, a lot of people don't know what a dietitian does, and for
Tell
some
us.
reason, yeah, many times we are lumped in with people who do, like, who call themselves nutritional therapists.
Mm.
Okay, we have to do a 4-year degree, you have to do professional exams, and every couple of years you have to prove that you're still competent to hold your license. And that's the way, it's a way of protecting the public. So we don't come up with fatty things, fatty diets, have so and so. We don't do, there are certain diets you hear of, and if I'm honest, as a dietitian, shake your head, because no, it's true. um, and so we look at people and we look at their lives its entirety, and to come with a plan that will work for them, that is realistic, that will actually work. And it's not about diets per se, it's about lifestyles, about the whole thing. Are you it's like when people say things like, oh, I have a good diet. There are no good or bad diets, so to speak. So there are no good or bad foods. Then it's either you have a good or bad diet. Does that make sense?
I think, yeah, because when you
Does
started
that make sense?
diet, right? The next thing that
Mm.
came to my mind was this fad with the keto diet, and I'm like, what is this keto diet? And people seem to be losing weight, eating all this fatty foods. So tell us a little bit more about that. I don't know. I mean, any other diet you think of that you can.
There's so many different ones, and usually at the beginning of the year, when everybody is on a high, everybody wants to make, they've made New Year's resolutions. Then you have a list of diets that comes out, and everybody jumps on the bandwagon. But what you find is that these tend to last for a very short time. And that's the thing, that's where people like me, we come in, we want you to have a change of lifestyle that will last, you know what I mean, that will last you, that it's just one of those things that you do. It's not like a fad that you jump on. I mean, even the keto diet, which I don't know how familiar you are with, but that actually was a diet that was developed to help people with epilepsy.
I didn't know that.
Hmm. So people, I mean, don't get me wrong, people use it, they lose weight, but the key issue is, does the weight stay off? That's always the sticking point when it comes to weight loss. Does it stay off? And usually it doesn't.
It doesn't, because
And
right back to doing the same thing you're doing.
because this is why, when people do things, and one of the things that I do when I'm working with people is I try to get people to think this through. You're trying to make small manageable changes that, if you're consistent with, will then result in long-term sustainable change. That's what you are looking for. Not, you're on this for a few weeks or months, you do what you need to do, and then all of a sudden you go back to what you were doing, and so it's just this cycle that you're on.
So it's
So
basically about finding out a plan that works for you and following through with that plan. And it's not like you only dedicate 3 months. It's a lifestyle. So you're
it's a lifestyle. And the other thing also that we do is, as a dietitian, and that's why I say, you look at the client's big picture. What about family members? Who else is in the family? How do we craft things such that the family can be taken along on the journey? So for instance, this idea of maybe the family is having one meal and I'm having a different kind of meal. Why? Do you see what I mean?
yes.
Because really, like I said earlier, food is more than just nutrition. There's a social aspect to food. You eat together and things like that. So those are the things that a qualified dietitian is trained to do. A lot of what we do is detective work, because you're looking for clues that kind of help you to work with the client to get them to their objective.
Okay. So Adenike says, are there meals in the West African culture that we should
Mhm.
generally minimize?
Well, like I said earlier on, no good foods, no bad foods. I think the key thing is frequency, and it's how much and how often. So I know, okay, let me give you an example. Typical West African diet is
Pounded,
starchy, heavy.
pound-
One of the key things is our portion size. That's the issue really. Portion control. And but the thing is, it doesn't just apply to West African people. It's just generally, if that's a lot of people fall down, it's the portion size. So it for instance, let's say I had a client. For some clients, the only issue that we need to deal with is their portion size. And if we deal with that, problems are solved.
mm,
So if from a West African point of view, pounded yam, which you mentioned, it's just how much are we having? Are we having a mountain of pounded yam? Or are we having, do you see what I mean?
yeah.
A moderate, because carbs are good. Carbs have been demonized over the years, but they are good. They're actually your body's preferred source of fuel or energy. So they're not bad. It's just how much we're having, and also whether we drown our carbs in fat, for
Hmm.
instance.
What do you mean by drown our carbs in fat?
Okay. So, for instance, if we're having pounded yam, are we having it with a sauce or soup or stew that is so oily?
Mm.
Or are we having carbs that have been, fried to death? Do you see what I mean? So because it's when we add, because when we add fat, we're adding extra calories. So it's just those little things that can make the difference between the number of calories we have.
All right. So Lady Ayola here says some have underlying conditions and they are not aware of the impact of what they're doing on their health and well-being. I believe she was referring to the diet. But
Yeah,
she has a question, and the question is it best to see consultation from a dietitian when working on a lifestyle healthy journey?
of course. Of course, without hesitation. I mean, you find that we have people who you would self-refer to see a dietitian, or maybe your doctor can actually, or consultants can refer you on to see a dietitian. But to be honest, dietitians are the best placed health professionals to help you if you need to make any dietary changes. Because, for instance, you have maybe clients who need, okay, good example, clients who have celiac disease, they have maybe an issue with gluten. Yeah, a diagnosed issue with gluten, not self-diagnosed,
Mhm.
and they need to avoid gluten in the diet. Now, if we're going to take something out, we need to make sure that what's left behind is still going to work and provide everything a person needs. So this is the sort of thing that we would do. So yes, we would say to someone, you would need to avoid X, Y, Z, but just to make sure, to make up for that, we're going to need to make sure we have this, that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aramis is also asking, what are your thoughts on intermittent fasting?
Well, intermittent fasting, it works for some people. Um, I think the key thing you'll find with fasting is that overall your calorie intake does go down. Okay. And like I said, for some people like there was a time when it was the 5-2, the 5-2 diet. For some people it worked. And there was some evidence to show that they were useful. I think it's what you make of it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and it's not something that I would say go ahead and do. It can work. Yeah, and there are books that have been written by colleagues that show that yes, it does work. But I think it's how you do it. Are you gonna, do this and then you binge on fatty, sugary foods? Do you see what I mean? When you are eating. So it's the key message I would put out to everyone is it's just balance, to be honest. I'm not on any specific diet. People think, oh, dietitian, she's on a diet. No. I just look at the overall balance of what I'm doing. Yeah, and I believe in like an 80-20 principle.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you eat right for 80%, then the 20% you can afford to go to town, as they say.
With the 20%. So my question now is how can our audience or our listeners, how can they get in touch with you for consultation? What are your consultation like? What are the fees attached to it? Can they go on your website? I mean, What do
Yes, they
you,
can go on the website. You can either go to but if you go via well, I've got a number of websites, but if you go to Illumina Lifestyle Consulting, so illuminalifestyle.com, that is the nutrition consultancy business website. So you
put
can
it
go
on?
on there and get in touch with us. That's one. Or if you find me, I'm on social, so Twitter. I'm now on Instagram, and it's just at Angela Tella One.
Okay.
So
Can you
yeah,
type that
Facebook,
in the comment
usual.
section if you can?
Okay, I can do that for you. I can do that.
You can.
Yeah, you can also go to angelatella.com.
Okay.
That's another way. So that might be easier to remember. But
Okay.
if you go via angelatella.com and just look on the consultancy, it'll take you to the other site. So
So let's divert a bit from diet.
yes.
Dad.
Yes.
My question now to you is, what advice will you give to an individual who's battling with the fear of dropping out and not
Mm,
living out God's plans for their lives to the fullest?
mm. Well, I think do you know what? If just thinking about that, I think to myself that if you've started a race, you might as well finish. You know, I know we're talking about having a finisher's mindset, and I think to myself, if you've already invested your time, your effort, then you might as well finish off. And even if we look at it from a biblical perspective, God has always been a finisher, always been a finisher. The Bible says that Jesus is the author and finisher of our faith.
Yeah.
When you look back at even creation, God started and he finished and then he rested. So there's just something about finishing. I remember when I was writing the books, um, starting something is always exciting. You have all the passion, all the energy, all the motivation. And then you get to the middle when it feels like you're just walking through syrup, or walking through mud. And I remember having conversations with myself saying, you know what, you are a finisher. So it was really interesting to find out that we would be talking about being a finisher today. It was really, really interesting. But yeah, being a finisher, I remember at the time, there were times when I just felt, oh, I've had enough of this whole thing. And I remember saying to myself, but you are a finisher. And I would say out loud, you are a finisher. So you need to get back in front of that laptop and get typing, get writing. So there's just something about finishing and having that sense of accomplishment. You've finished. The Bible says better the end of a thing than the beginning. Why? I've always wondered why. And I believe it's because you're able to look back and see where you came from. Do you know what I mean? And then you now see where you're at. And there's just something about finishing, and also for anyone who is thinking, oh, I'm afraid. It might be, yes, a challenging time, but you need to also remember that sometimes there is a bit of a delay. Sometimes God allows things to be drawn out, just sometimes, because there are certain character traits he wants you to develop. There's certain things he wants you to learn along the way, because I think sometimes we can get so focused on coming to the end of a journey that we don't enjoy the journey and we don't pick up what we're meant to pick up along the way. So if anybody is afraid and thinking, oh, I can't do this anymore, you need to hang in there. It's okay. I think it was Zig Ziglar. He said, if you're tired, it's okay to rest. Just don't quit.
That is very interesting because when I think of your story, that
Mm-hmm.
you shared with us today, I think of you're going on a journey. You're taking the train somewhere, you're taking the subway somewhere, you're taking the tube somewhere, right? And you can either be eager and be anxious to just get into the destination. You forget to see who's around me. You forget to look at the people on the train, on the tube. You forget to admire your environment. You forget to basically enjoy the process,
Mm-hmm.
right? And God is very much interested in the process, like you said. God is very much interested in who we become
Mm-hmm.
along the
Thank you.
way.
Yeah, along
I
the
believe there's a part in the Bible too that talks about um I'm not let me not say that. I'm not sure if it's the Bible, but there's like I've often heard of this saying that, it's the person that finishes that gets the reward. So basically, it's the athlete that finishes well that gets the medal. But if you don't finish, you're not gonna get anything. So really, you're not rewarded for starting anything. You're
Yeah.
rewarded when you finish.
And finish. And just to add on to what you just said, it is in the Bible actually. It's like, for instance, where Paul says, that I bring myself, my body under subjection, lest I be disqualified.
Yes,
And even he talks about, in that scripture, he said, there's a scripture that says that, I've run the race, I've finished my course. I said, and now there's a crown laid up for me.
for me.
So there's just something about finishing. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not to minimize the challenges, because there are some challenges that are just so challenging, but I think it's having certain quality traits. One of them is patience and resilience, and this is one of the things that hanging in does for you. It builds resilience, and I think resilience is one of those traits that you need, particularly for the world that we live in right now. You need to be someone who is resilient. It's like when the Bible says that if you faint in the day of adversity,
Your strength is weak.
then your strength is small. In fact, there's a translation that says then there wasn't much to you in the first place.
Hmm. And now that you talk about resilience, even right now in light of COVID, you need resilience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right now we need to ride the wave of whatever our new world is, whatever our new family is, whatever our new career is, whatever life has given to us right now. We have to take advantage. And I believe the Bible also talks about we should be careful how we live. So talking about resilience, God is also a resilient God. God doesn't give up on us.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's so true.
His
It's so
love,
true. It's so
God is
true.
very resilient in his love for us. He doesn't give up on us, and he loves us, and he gives us opportunities every day to become the best version of ourselves. I have really enjoyed this conversation with you. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I think it's been a really nice conversation. It's been nice chatting. They've been interesting questions. And yeah, I mean, people that are, and anyone who's watching, feel free to
All right. I'm going to quickly
hook up with
through the
me.
comments,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
acknowledge. Um, let's see if we have any. Okay, I didn't KIB says challenges can get overwhelming. All right, and I believe that's when you were talking about when you started your business, and I had asked you a question about what kind of challenges do you face that you can't put down in a list, and she had mentioned that challenges can be overwhelming. So, all right, Adenike Ibe says this is much needed. Adekemi says execution is where most of the work exists. Adenike IB says, I have read this book and it was a blessing. I can't wait to read your book, Angela. I can't wait.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
Aram,
No, you won't be disappointed. I can say that for myself. I can speak up on that.
okay. Aramis 50 says, resolute woman. Adekemi says, book publishing is not a joke. Lydia Yola says, absolutely, that's great. How can I get the books, please? And we have mentioned that you can get the books on Amazon. I did
Amazon or healthywestafrican.com.
or healthywestafrican.com, amazon.com or healthywestafrican.com. Can you please put in the name of the books in the comment section?
Sure.
Comments?
Sure. Yep, I'll do
Yeah.
that. Let's see. Do you want me to do that right now or?
I'm just reading out the comments. I didn't
Okay.
IB says you actually set up a publishing company when none published yours. Yeah, a couple of people asking about your books. Aramis 50 says well done. Adekemi 80 says such a strong woman. Adenike IB says people want the books. We need to make it global. All right.
Yes, we're taking it global.
All right. All right. Okay. Let's see. I'm just trying to look through the comment here. Oh, okay. So Adenike Abi says some stews are palm oil with egusi.
That's what I was referring to.
That
You
is
stick your fingers in and they come out with an interesting coating.
Adekemi 80 says for the joy that lies ahead. Sometimes it's more about the process we go through. Okay, Aramis 50 is asking, any healthy tips you can leave with us?
Okay, well, the first thing I would say is, firstly, I would say regular meals. That's the starting point, regular meals. Some people skip their meals.
What
So I
kind
would say sort of,
what
beg your
kind
pardon? Right, I didn't catch that.
I said what kind of regular meals?
Oh, regular meals. Okay, so for instance, it would be good to have to form the habit of breakfast, lunch, and an evening meal. And then having snacks in between, if that makes sense. So on the either side of lunch, have a snack. Okay, and in terms of what kind of meals, you want to look at making sure that you have a balanced meal. So you want to make sure that your meals have carbohydrates. You want them to have a bit of protein. So a modest amount of carbohydrates, a modest amount. So you base your meals on starchy foods, okay, but not a lot of them. Then you have a modest amount of protein. And this could be whether it's animal or vegetable protein or plant protein rather. And then you ensure that you have a good size or a good portion of vegetables.
So
Okay.
my next question now will be, is there a specific time that you should eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, and what kind of snacks?
Okay. When you're looking at snacks, you want healthy snacks. You want snacks that are not full of calories. See, the issue with fatty and sugary foods, and the reason why we say limit those, is because you get lots of calories without any nutrition.
Mm,
Okay? So you want to ensure that any snacks you have are going to give you some calories, but also give you nutrition or nutrients. Does that make sense?
yes.
So for instance, a good example would be maybe a small handful of nuts. It could be things like rice cakes. It could be fruit. So all these foods that I've just mentioned, for instance, they do contain calories, but you're also getting nutrients with them. Yeah, and it's not to say that you can't have the sugary foods. You can't. Yes, you can, or the fatty foods. It's just a little bit every now and again as a treat,
O-
because really those foods should be treats. They should be treats.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot more in the books. Let's put it that way.
Okay. So get the book.
Get
Get
the books.
Thank
Yeah.
you so
Get.
much. Thank you so much, Angela, for this wonderful time. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. A couple of announcements. We have Command the Week every Monday morning. Esther's Preparation Room, women gather together to jumpstart the week with a 30-minute intense prayer session to declare the word of God and enforce victory in all spheres of life and our nations. Join us and commit to be a part of these sessions. We're also live on Instagram at 12 a.m. every morning. The call is every Saturday. Esther's Preparation Room, women gather to intercede and stand in the gap for the church and the nations every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. 7 Eastern Standard Time. Please join us on all our social media handles: YouTube, Esther's Preparation Room; Telegram, Esther's Preparation Room; and Facebook, Esther's Preparation Room; obviously, Instagram, Esther's Preparation Room. To everyone who has joined us today, thank you so much for sharing and spending your Saturday with us. Next week, Saturday, also be having another session, 12 p.m. Thank you so much for bearing with us. Thank you so much, Angela, for educating us, inspiring us to live healthy, balanced life, and also teaching us how to be resolute and finish the course. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too. Bye.